Friendships on the spiritual journey. This is about to be a deep dive. We have the whiteboard here. Why do I have a whiteboard? We're about to talk about friendships. Where's the relevancy of a whiteboard? Let me tell you something. While I've been away, yes, it's been 9 days, 9 whole days of really being in my creative energy. I have created so much more than I have in the past couple months. And I'm gonna share it with you today. So we're gonna be talking about friendships on the spiritual journey, rough patches, a couple other questions you guys asked me, but we're gonna be talking about this in a different way. In the stillness, I've created a method. Now, what is this method? You may be asking. Well, when we think about the spiritual journey, we often hear these things of, oh, it's a journey, not a destination, and we're kind of just expected to just take it. We're kind of just expected to go on this journey and go through this whole path and take all of the suffering and go deep, deep, deep into the dark. And while the dark is so important, we have to understand too that we're a lot more robotic than we think. And what I mean by that is there's actually some things that we can predict. There's actually specific phases that all of us go through in our spiritual journey. There's actually points in time where we can expect certain things. In Ifa, we say the only thing that we cannot change is when we're born and when we die. But everything in between those two things can be divined on and changed. And so what I mean by that is, and why I'm mentioning that as well, is because similarly to how in Ifa we're given divination and we're given a roadmap, so to say, of the energy that we should expect. What I created here today, well, not today, the past week or so, what I created is a system of what to expect. And how all of your questions that you guys asked me in my posts actually fit perfectly in the system. And I'm smiling so hard because I'm so fucking excited to share this with you guys. And this is gonna be a whole ebook. And yes, it's gonna be a free ebook. So make sure you're on my newsletter and let's dive in, okay? So this is the journey through the spiritual journey, the journey through the spiritual path, what you should be expecting, and just let me know when this resonates. It will resonate, but let me know when it resonates in the comments because we're gonna be talking about a whole bunch of things. So we know that step 1 in the spiritual journey, and before you even say, yeah, my handwriting is chicken scratch, and you're either gonna love it or you hate it, okay? It don't matter. Step 1 is gonna be realization. Step 1 in the spiritual journey is always realization. Okay, this is the moment that you decide, or not decide, but this is the moment that you awaken rather to the truth of not just who you are, but also the truth of this reality. You start to realize that you're not who you say you are. Maybe you start to realize that you have this mask, that there's this version of you that you've been pretending to be. And maybe you start to realize that there's more out there, right? There's more out there. I'm gonna do a brief overview of this whole thing, and then we're gonna talk about each individual thing. Step 2 is gonna be exploration. This is really gonna be your information era. This is gonna be when you start to intake a lot of information. This is gonna be when you start to get all the books and you start asking a lot of questions. And so maybe this is when you start, going online and looking things up on Amazon or wherever you are and start to just get a whole bunch of books. I remember when I did this, I got a whole big book list. I was going through all these different spiritual people on the internet, and I got this really big book list and I ordered all of them. I spent like $300. And then this is where you start to explore. You start to discover your interests, discover what really pulls you. Maybe it's crystal healing, maybe it's shadow work, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's kundalini, whatever the case is. You start to really explore, and you start to intake information in a whole new way. Okay? Because this whole world, as you saw in your realization phase, this whole world just starts to open up to you. You start to see that there is something bigger than what you think or you thought there was. Okay? Now, step 2.5 is a funny one, okay? And this is all, of course, cyclical. So you're gonna kind of be tottering through some of these, some at the same time, some back and forth. And step 2.5 is really exemplifying this idea of, what should I say? This idea of contracting, expanding, because you're gonna go through step 2 and step 2.5 dozens of times before you reach your final form. And step 2.5 is your ego death. See, in the exploration phase, we think we know who we are. In the exploration phase, we start to deep dive and do the meditations and do all the things, and we start to really feel like, this is who I am. I am a healer. I am a medicine woman. I am this person. And you gotta laugh sometimes, which is why I'm saying it like this, but you really start to come into your own, right? And you're like, yeah, this is me. I'm this. I am my ancestors. This is when, you go on your these spiritual pages and you're like, repost, yeah. And then you come into that 2.5. You come into the ego death. And what the ego death really is looking at all the information that you've consumed and starting to see, have I just developed a whole new ego for myself around who I think that I should be now that I have all this information? Have I just developed this ego that is really a projection of shame? And what I mean by that is most of the time when we come into that realization phase and we come into this space of really seeing who we are and really seeing the truth of the situation, many times people come to spirituality because they're running from something. They're running to healing from oppression. They're running to higher levels of connection with the divine, away from the colonized way that we view God, right? We, many times, and I'm gonna bring Ifa into this one more time, we talk about in Osa Meji, my Iya said this a couple weeks ago, that in Osa Meji, which is the runaway Odu, that we have to be very careful when we receive Osa Meji or Osa in a reading, because it shows us not just what we're running from, but it also teaches us the energy or the lesson of when we are running from something, we are always running to something. Even if we think that we are running from abuse or running from something bad, we're always running to something. And so the question is, are you being intentional with both? And so the funny part about the realization and exploration, and then comes in the ego death, is the fact that when we come into this spiritual journey, especially if we're under 25, which probably most of you guys who are watching this are probably under 25, you're still trying to find yourself and you still haven't processed some of the shame that you carry. And even, especially if we're under 25, but it could be really until you're 100 years old, we can carry shame, right? But especially for those of us who haven't entered, or those of you guys who haven't entered your Saturn return, you carry a lot of shame, and that shame really manifests in many different ways. One of the ways that it manifests is through the remaking over and over again of a false personality. This false personality really causes us to cling on to new identities and new things as a way of finally trying to accept ourselves. Well, maybe if I become the spiritual person who loves yoga and does this and does that, maybe I'll finally love myself. Well, maybe if I become that witch that I'm making my herbs and my potions and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, maybe I'll finally love myself. Or most of the time, this is a very general statement, but sometimes this will happen too. If you've come into spirituality manifesting self-love because deep down inside, sorry, there's a truck coming by, but deep down inside that you're really unhappy with your life and you really deeply resent yourself. And so then what ends up happening is you come into the realization that you can change everything. You come into the realization that maybe things can be different. You explore all the ways that things can be different. And then you have this moment where you come into step 2.5 of the ego death, where you really sit and realize, holy shit, I've just created another cave for myself. A cage. I've just created another cage for myself. I've created this spiritual person that I thought was better than who I left and who I ran from. Who I ran from in the pursuit of running to healing was myself. And then you realize that there is no self, and then you realize that there is no ego, and then you realize that the personality is a made-up structure, and then you realize that all these things are just of the mind, and then here comes your ego death. Here comes your ego death. Step 3. Don't worry, it's all gonna tie in. Step 3 is reconstruction. Reconstruction. This is where you really start to get in tune with who you are authentically. This is where you really start to pick back up the pieces of your soul essence, not your personality, your actual essence. In the reconstruction phase, you really start to do things with more integrity because you're not doing them because you think that they'll yield a result. You're doing them because you really feel deep down in your heart that this is what you want to do. And so in your reconstruction phase, it's a little bit of exploring. It's a little bit of letting go of the ego. It's a little bit of realization. It's a little bit of everything. In your reconstruction phase, you start to get really, 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 really clear on what your purpose is. You start to get really clear on why you've been brought here. You start to get really clear on who you actually are. And in your reconstruction phase, this is really when you start to build things from the ground up, because you're no longer wearing the mask of who you thought that you had to be. That's what happens in your reconstruction phase. And then I'll just put step, I didn't even put step 3. And then in step 4, we have reclamation. I'll show you. We have reclamation. Now, in your reclamation phase, this is when you really start to manifest the life of your dreams. This is really when you start to manifest what you really are supposed to be here doing. This is when you start to actually have sustainable growth in your business, and you can even reach crazy heights when it comes to new finances and things like that. With the reclamation phase, this is where you can really start to tap into new and higher levels of your limitlessness. In the reclamation phase, this is really when you can reach your full potential. And it's really important for us to begin to see this and see it almost as a stepwise process, because I've come to realize through the hundreds of people that I've coached, thousands of people that I've read, but hundreds of people that I've coached, hundreds of people who went through my programs in X, Y, and Z, that not everybody is ready for certain types of medicine, because everyone is at different points in their journey. And the different points in their journey really have some pain in it, and they have some power in it. There's pain and power in your realization. There's pain and power in your exploration, in your ego death, in your reconstruction, in your reclamation. And so I'm doing a lot of restructuring right now. As you guys know, I've been really going into the stillness and asking Spirit to guide me. And Spirit has been showing me how exactly I am meant to kind of, it's like I'm giving a sound to this action that I'm doing around all of my work right now. But this is the framework. And like how I said, join my newsletter and you'll get an ebook about all these processes, really down to trauma and all these things in my newsletter. But let's talk about certain things. So let's talk about friendship. Let's talk about how friendship and maintaining friendship and all these things can be, how this fits into play when it comes to this structure. We're gonna go here and then here, right? Oh, that's wrong. These kind of go back and forth, remember? So we go from here to here, back and forth, and then these are back and forth as well. And then we go to the reclamation phase. So just if you have an idea, so you can have a clearer idea. Yes, again, my handwriting is not the best, and I love it like that. I love how ugly it is. Anyhow, evil laugh. So this is the roadmap of the spiritual awakening. This is the roadmap of the spiritual journey, and every piece of work on the fucking planet that you could possibly do fits somewhere in this structure. And again, on my newsletter, I'll be releasing a free ebook on this. So let's talk about it. Now, when it comes to friendship, the question is, when are you making these friendships? Right? Someone asked me, and I have it right here. I'm gonna give you this specific question. How has your journey been with friendships, whether friendship development, friendship breakups, friendship with self, all of these things? So the most important part is, like how I just said, it really depends on where the friendship came into your life, when the friendship came into your life, and where the friendship came into your life. Because there are certain points of tension that everyone has in regards to their spiritual journey that can make a friendship really easy and effortless, or can make a friendship really hard. The friends that we make before we come into the realization phase, let's be fucking real, they don't know who you are anymore. If you are anywhere near your exploration and ego death phase, your friends don't know who you are. And the only friends that are gonna stay around and stick around as you move through this whole cycle are gonna be the ones that love you at your core and love you at your essence. The fact of the matter is, most friendships and honestly, every relationship in your life, they have you in their life and you have them in their life, whether you know subconsciously or consciously, for a specific reason. Now, there are some people in this world that they're a lot more intentional with this reason for good or for bad. And there are some people in this world that are not conscious to the reason that they have that friendship. But I just ask you to not be triggered by that statement, and ask you to just ask yourself, what reasons do I have my friendships in my life, right? And I say all that to say, if you no longer fit the, you no longer fit the requirement, or you fit the output that this friend previously labeled you as, well, I'm friends with Ifákóredé because she loves to go out, or she loves to do that, or she does that. Let's just have one example, right? I'm friends with Ifákóredé because Ifákóredé loves to go out. I do love to go out, okay? Now, I've been in the stillness and I've not been going out like how I used to, but my friends, quote unquote, who previously really just liked to go out with me and didn't really just like to sit in my sunroom with me and just like be, they're not gonna prioritize my friendship anymore. And they probably are maybe not even gonna be friends with me anymore, because they have that one output that they got from me, they're no longer getting. And so if you're going through your exploration and ego death phase and you're changing a lot of aspects of yourself, then you need to expect that the friendships that you used to have are going to fall to the wayside, especially when they are mostly output friendships, okay? The only friendships that are gonna survive are friendships that really honor and love your core essence. And these are also the friendships that you can go months, years without talking to this person, but then when you get on the phone with them, it's like nothing ever happened. They're always rooting for you. You can change every day. You could be a coach one day, you could be, a personal trainer the next day, you could be a teacher the next day, you could be an artist the next day, and they're gonna be in your corner because they just fucking love you. Now, those are the friendships that are gonna reach, or that are going to stay with you throughout this whole process. But there are a lot of friendships that will only see you as an output. And again, this is subconscious and conscious. But the fact of the matter is, you have to use your discernment well enough to know how people are responding to you. Do they want to get to know you? Do they want to really know your soul essence? Do they want to know that you've been loving Vampire Diaries? Me and my partner have been watching Vampire Diaries like we 16, on the edge of our seats with Elena Gilbert and cast, okay? But do they really want to get to know you? Or do they just want you for a specific reason? Is there a specific output that they're looking for when it comes to their relationship with you? And so navigating friendships has been interesting to me because I love my work. I love what I do. I'm a workaholic. It makes me so happy to do what I do, to work with clients, to create programs, to do all this other kind of stuff, to make content and stuff. So I've been a lot more secluded, but I have gotten clearer and clearer and clearer on who is actually in alignment with my soul essence. And as I prepare for a big move, most of my people who really love me for my soul essence, they've already moved already. So it's like spirit's trying to push me out the nest too. But it's been interesting for me to answer your question. It's been interesting for me, but to put it in, in this framework, you have to just be careful about when certain friendships come into your life. So be careful about the friendships that you make before your realization phase. That's number one. But as you are in between your exploration and ego death phase, this is where you're going to lose a lot of the friendships that you make and that you had before. And what I mean by that is you're gonna be friends with a lot of people who, let's just say this, right? This is kind of true for me, not true for me, but let's put me out the question. You're a reader, you're a card reader, right? You made a lot of friends with other people who are card readers. You started realizing that there's a specific purpose that you were meant to fulfill that's not just with card reading. That is part of my story, but X, Y, and Z. And as you're in your exploration and ego death phase, the people who previously identified with the version of you that's a card reader are not going to really identify with you anymore. And so as you're moving into your reconstruction phase, you should expect those friendships to leave. You should expect those friendships to begin to die out. Because not only was there probably a little bit of input, or output rather, in that friendship that they were expecting from you, but you no longer identify with that old version of you. You no longer identify with what you used to like or what you used to really prioritize. You're just not there anymore. And so the friendships that you make in your exploration and ego death phase, expect them to leave. Expect them to leave. The friendships that you make in your reconstruction phase are actually going to be, in my opinion, the most valuable. Actually, the second most valuable. The first most valuable is going to be the friendships that really honor your soul essence. And I have friends like that for sure. I do, since, you know, decades and decades and decades ago. But the friendships that I've made in my reconstruction phase, I really value as well, because they're the friendships that really identify with the pieces and parts of me right now that I know are here to stay. One example is fitness. One example is my identity as a queer woman, right? These things have really become solidified in my life, and they are not going anywhere because they're here to stay. And my friends that I've made that also really celebrate those same aspects of themselves and we connect with on a really deep level, and that both of those things are really part of my essence and is part of their essence as well. They're here to stay. And they are the friendships that I made in my reconstruction phase, and that's very beautiful. Now, in your reclamation phase, of course, your friendships are going to be very beautiful as well, but a lot of the friendships that you make in your reclamation phase are going to be very networking based, okay? They're going to be very, you know, friendships that are going to be able to help you on your journey in some way when it comes to your business and when it comes to building your life, and it's going to be like your community. It's going to be like your tribe, the people who are around you. It's going to be like your neighbors almost, and that they're really going to help support your reclamation phase. So to answer your question about friendships, it really just depends on where you met your friends on this whole chart. That's going to really determine how long they stay in your life. Now, the next question that I have here is, how did you deal with rough patches? I feel like I'm being attacked mentally, physically, and spiritually. I somewhat isolated myself from other people who I thought was giving me that feeling, but IDK, I think it's me. It's always you, I promise you. It's almost always you, babe. I love you, but I have to tell you that these people that you think are the problem, they're just a reflection of whatever stage that you're at. I pray and talk to God, but TBH, I feel like nobody hears me, and I'm a single first-time mom. It's a lot to fathom, TBH. How do you deal with this? How would you deal with this? Be blunt, because I need to hear something helpful. Ashe. There's been so many rough patches that I've been through. Obviously, after my arrest and having nowhere to stay and sleeping on couches and ultimately finding an apartment that was $300 a month with someone who just accepted me and loved me and actually ended up having the same birthday as me. That was probably my biggest rough patch in life. I had no idea where my life was gonna go. How I got through that rough patch, and I'm gonna bring the chart back in here in 1 second, but how I got through that rough patch was I did a lot of gratitude notes. The thing is, and if you didn't watch my last video, please go back and watch it, but your reality really is created from whatever you concentrate on. So if you're obsessing over the very thing that you're trying to release, AKA the rough patch, AKA the problems in your life, you'll just continue to get more and more problems. Do not obsess over the problems for so long that you forget to find a solution. And when I was in a really, really bad rough patch before I went to court and got claimed not guilty and all that kind of stuff, I just started writing gratitude notes, and I started posting these sticky notes all over my wall of the things that I was grateful for in that moment. I had no idea what was about to go on. Again, I had no idea what was about to happen, but I started writing gratitude notes. And you could talk to God, but when you talk to God from a space of desperation, of course you're gonna think that you hear nothing, because ultimately God is infinite. So God is really going to reflect a lot of what you give that energy, you know, in that moment. A lot of times when we pray, we want to make sure we pray from a space of it is done, not begging for it to be done, because ultimately God lives within you. Do you need to hear that again? Ultimately, God lives within you. And so when you're praying, you're really amplifying the God force within you, as well as speaking to the ultimate limitless force outside of you. And so when you pray, you want to make sure that you are praying from a space of it is done, not begging for it to be done. Because then you'll be perpetually in a state of it never being done if you're always affirming that it is never done. So I say all that to say, start doing gratitude notes. Start doing post-it notes, start putting them on your wall, start focusing on solutions. You need to focus on solutions. Now, if that means some type of program to get more community around you, to get more help, if that means moving somewhere that you'll get more help, if that means following your highest joy to a point where you start to move differently, you need to start doing that. You need to accept that where you're at right now is not in alignment, and you need to accept that there is a solution out there. But the solution is not going to come from the same mind that is obsessing over the problem. Stop trying to figure out who you need to cut off. Stop trying to figure out, why is God not listening to me? And start being at the vibrational set point of the solution. This is the only way to get out of it. What you're probably going through right now is a little bit of ego death and a little bit of reconstruction. Okay? God right now is pushing you to recreate your life. And if you are feeling stuck, if you're feeling like, I don't know what the fuck to do, I feel like I'm behind a wall, whatever the case is, you're feeling the tension between the ego death and the reconstruction. Now, like how I said before, the problem is most likely you, okay? And so what that also means is you're the solution as well. You're not just the problem, you're the solution. Congratulations. And so what you need to start asking yourself is, what parts of me, not just who I am, sorry for the trip, not just who I am, but also what do I do? What do I engage with? What habits do I have? What parts of me do I need to let go that I know I need to let go in order for me to step into who I really am? Because again, what God is calling you to do is go into your reconstruction phase. And the only reason why you're feeling alone and feel like you're having all these problems is because you're still holding on to the shit that has been keeping you away from yourself all the way up until this point. Let it go. That's what I'm gonna say about that. I love you. Now, I have some other questions here. I'm gonna answer one more relevant question and I'm gonna answer two more. I wanted to ask, how can we maintain relationships with romantic partners who are on different spiritual levels? There's no such thing as a different spiritual level. I love you. We're not above anybody. There's nobody, maybe I need to tell somebody that right now. There's only different levels of conscious awareness, but if you ever come across a teacher who tries to make themselves seem that they're better than other people, you have come across a spiritual narcissist. Congratulations. Run far away as you can. And I want you to also ask yourself, whatever, let's not go into that. Anyways, so there's no such thing as different spiritual levels. There's only different levels of conscious awareness. So if we're talking about different levels of awareness, that is a whole different story. Now, if we have a romantic partner that's not at the same level of awareness as us, you need to be really reconsidering the relationship. And what do I mean by this? There is a difference between someone who's just not at the awareness versus not at the perceived level. Now, I'm gonna give you an example. If you're someone who has an established business, you're making a lot of money or whatever the case is, and then you come into a relationship with someone who has a business idea but hasn't taken off or whatever the case is, if they know exactly what they need to do, if they're working towards it, if they are moving at that same frequency as you, then they are the same level as you. They're at the same conscious awareness as you. They have not attracted in the physical results just as yet because they are creating that right now, but they are at the same level of awareness as you. Now, someone, like if you're dating someone and if you're dating and you're someone who has a business, I'm just gonna use business because it's easy to, compare. If you have a business, a spirit-led business, a purpose-led business, and then you're dating somebody who has no idea what their purpose is, doesn't really care about finding their purpose, just is like, oh, that's all your shit, that's a different level of awareness. That's a different level of awareness because everybody has a purpose. And not everybody's purpose is to have a business, but everyone, one of the life lessons I feel is discovering your purpose. I'm very passionate about that. Obviously, that's why I have the free ebook in my bio of how to discover your purpose. But if you're dating someone or you start to date someone who doesn't care about their purpose, that doesn't even want to know, that's a whole different level of awareness, and you need to really be reconsidering your relationship with that person. So how do you navigate it? I want you to ask yourself, am I thinking about things on a hierarchy here? Or am I really looking at someone's level of awareness? Because that's a very big different thing. Do not date people who are out of your level of spiritual awareness. You probably shouldn't even be friends with people who are out of your level of spiritual awareness, conscious awareness. And that is not in knowledge, that is in embodiment. I'm gonna actually repeat that, that's very important. It's not in knowledge, it is in embodiment. So I'm gonna give you one example, right? I have a lot of knowledge about the chakras. I have obviously, first contact, have a lot of knowledge about the chakras. My partner doesn't have all this knowledge, the same level of knowledge that I have about the chakras, but they have taught me so much about love, about vulnerability, and about trust, which many times we could, of course, relate that to the anahata and the heart chakra. So while I had a lot of information and a lot of embodiment, they brought a whole different level of embodiment into my life without having the spiritual and Sanskrit names for these things. They really helped me with a lot of these things. And so we're at the same level of conscious awareness, but of course, maybe some things I know more of and some things they know more of. They've also educated me on a lot of stuff that I don't know that much about, and vice versa. So it's not about the level of knowledge, it's about the level of embodiment, and that's how you can tell where someone's conscious awareness is. And if someone is not the same level of conscious awareness as you, then you probably should not be friends with them or probably should not date them. Because ultimately, their shadow and their trauma is gonna ultimately sabotage the relationship. The jealousy, envy, comparison may find a way to slither in there, okay? So that's my response to that. Now, we kind of messed it up here, realization. So, realization. So as far as the chart, when you should start to really think about attracting your divine partner is gonna be in your reconstruction and your reclamation phase. If you are here, every divine partner that you have is going to be a karmic cycle. It's going to be a karmic lesson. I love you. Had to tell you that. If you are here in your realization, exploration, ego death, you're going to probably break up with the person who you're with. I love you. You have to know that. If you're not in your reconstruction reclamation phase, the person who you fell in love with, / the person who fell in love with you, they're not going to really know you at the end of the day. Okay. Now, of course, there's partners that we can have that really love our divine essence, but the way that we reconstruct their life the way that we reconstruct our own lives in the reconstruction phase may not agree with the same values that they have or the same desires that they have for their life. So you probably will end up breaking up. Okay, so if you're having any romantic relationship in your realization, exploration, or ego death phase, it's probably gonna die. It's probably gonna break up. Okay, I love you. Had to tell you that. Feel free to keep leaving questions also in the comments if you guys have any questions. 2 more questions that are a little bit curveballs here. Have I ever had an out of body experience? Would love to hear your experiences regarding astral projection I do not strive to leave my body. I strive to be here. I have done those things. That is not a goal of mine. Maybe it'll change in the future. That is not a goal of mine. The goal of mine is to be fully in my body and to expand my conscious awareness all the way up to the celestial body. And that, of course, is what we teach, or what I teach in First Contact. That's always going to be the goal, is to expand my conscious awareness to all bodies. As far as my out-of-body experience, maybe I'll do a whole YouTube video on my supernatural experiences. I definitely have had multiple. But I find that people, really quick side note, I find that people who are creatives, I love creatives. I have a lot of creative friends, and a lot of my relationship partners have been creative. I find that a lot of people who are creatives, they tend to have a lot of astral experiences, and this is because they're tapped into the etheric template realm, which is the realm of pure creation. So don't ask me about it. I'm creative, but in my own way. And I'm never going to teach how to do astral projection, because I want you to stay here on earth with us. There's nothing wrong with this earth. So that's that. Maybe I'll do a whole supernatural video though, but that's the answer to that. I have had them, but I do not recommend that being a goal, because you want to be here. You don't want to be anywhere else. If you were supposed to be somewhere else, and you would have manifested yourself in a different reality, period. Someone else asks, what are my views on polyamory? I love you. I love you guys who ask these questions. I love my divine partner, and I'm a one and done kind of gal. You know, I'm not interested in multiple relationships. I'm dating right now someone who has a Gemini Mercury and Gemini Venus, and I have a Gemini Venus too, so we both are 10 different people at the same time. So I'm loving it over here. I'm not the person to ask about that. I'm gonna be quite honest, and it's okay to say you don't know sometimes. I personally feel that there's a lot of people who say that they want poly relationships who really are operating from a lot of trauma and a lot of feelings of not enoughness. Not saying that that's your case, but I know, especially as a queer woman in the queer community, that is a topic that needs to be discovered or discussed. Let's not even talk about it. Child, let's not even talk about it. But we need to make sure that whatever relationship that we're entering it from a space of enoughness, from self-love, and from love for the other person. And there's a lot of people who want to be poly because they feel like no one person will ever love them. So it's kind of the same reason why there's no such thing as relationship happy weight. That's a whole nother video in itself. But you may be trying to feed yourself something that you're not getting in one relationship with other things outside of the relationship. So just be very mindful. So those are our 2 miscellaneous questions. I think I got all of them, but that is the spiritual system for the spiritual awakening. That is the step-by-step system for the spiritual awakening. I hope you really enjoyed it. And comment any questions. Let me know how you feel. Said a lot of funny things in this video. I hope you disagree or agree. It don't matter. If you got to the end of this video, comment a butterfly. So happy to be back with you. I love you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.